There are no walk-off home runs in the World Baseball Classic. We're suddenly at 3 as an exciting round of the group stages continues. We're going to be talking about the WBC, how it's been going so far, and all the Hall of Famers you might be watching both in the WBC and this season. Well, the United States took care of business last night. It was a very, I don't want to say perfunctory win, but very, by the numbers until, the game, even if it was close for a while, it never really felt close.
And it was actually
right. It was
Great Britain had a 1-0 lead in the 5th inning, and so I would think that some of the people are going, "What is going on here, guys? We've batted 4 times and we haven't scored. That's not supposed to happen."
Right, but at the same time, watching that team, you just sort of know eventually Great Britain is going to put a guy on the mound, which is what happened. They just simply could not get these guys out. And we were watching the Dominican Republic play today, and the same thing happened in their game. Eventually, they had to the Netherlands had to put a guy on the mound.
He might have pitched like in the minor leagues 3 years ago.
Right. He was in the Atlantic League last year, and he wasn't good.
Right,
and so he got hammered.
And the run scoring the late innings by the 2 favorites, and there's probably 3 favorites. I would say, would you put Puerto Rico in there as the 3rd favorite?
No,
or Venezuela.
It's really
just those 2. You think? What about Japan?
I think it's the U.S., Japan, and the Dominican Republic.
Those are the 3 horses, and of course, Shohei has already been doing Shohei things.
Everybody's been, hitting home runs. I think we've seen a big Judges hit a home run, Schwarber's hit a home run, Soto's hit multiple home runs, Caminero's hit multiple home runs, Vladdy hit a home run. Everybody's hitting home runs.
Well, not only home runs. Who has 2 home runs and is the leading hitter through 2 games in the World Baseball Classic? The power slugger Luis Arias.
I was going to guess Stuart Fairchild for
Luis Arias
Taiwan.
has 2 homers. He's batting .625 with an ops of 2.292. Now, he's only played 2 games, but still, for Luis Arias,
he's hitting home runs. Yeah,
it's like, what's going on here?
But I think regardless of the quality of the competition and how close the games are, because we're starting to see some run rule games, a lot of the games haven't felt particularly close or even that competitive. That's okay. I don't think we're not looking for that. You can clearly tell how much this matters to everybody involved, because look at the guys on Panama last night and how much that game meant to them and between them and Puerto Rico.
And the fans are so into it, right?
Oh, so into
it. They get into it, and in San Juan where they're playing the games, I think they've played every night, so they're bringing the fans into the ballpark for the Puerto Rican team, and which is running a little short because they don't have Francisco Lindor, who would be a heck of an addition.
They don't have Javi Baez
to a team like that, so that hurts their chances a little bit. But it's fun to have that sort of hometown crowd sort of bolstering your team, and just the atmosphere is just so exciting.
And don't think this isn't having an impact on baseball development in these other countries. I think Czechia appeared in 2023, and since then, youth baseball participation has doubled.
Right.
Because I mean that was probably going from like 24 to 48 guys, but
it didn't help them because they are ousted now of the tournament, as was
I don't think the fans from these countries are going there expecting they're looking at it the same way Americans look at the World Cup for soccer. They're not expecting their teams to go there and win. They'd be like, look, okay, we want to see them win a game. We want to see them start competing, and all of a sudden, maybe a World Baseball Classic or 2 from now, Brazil is like, okay, hey, we want to make a dark horse run at getting out second in a group now.
Or getting so if you go back and because I'm obviously so much older than you, the way that basketball was in the Olympics for the U.S. And at the time back in 1972, the Soviet Union, right? The U.S. had won every gold medal in the Olympics, and they were playing with their amateur players. They were playing with college players. They didn't have professionals doing it.
Right.
They still were good enough to beat everybody in the world until 1972, when obviously the Soviet Union won that disputed game, which still pisses me off. And even I was a kid later, years later. The point is that you can see over the years how the other nations took in, and the development of the sport to be competitive with the U.S. now, where it's no cake.
Well, even go back and look at 1992 when they send out the Dream Team and they absolutely obliterate everybody off the face of the planet. It was the best NBA players, and it wasn't close. But now we're sending the best NBA guys every year, and they're just games.
Right, and this year we have, some people have called this American team the Dream Team. But if you go over and you look at the Dominican Republic team, at least from a lineup perspective,
it's just as much of a dream team.
That's pretty much a dream team too. So you're seeing the sort of the change go over, and those other teams, as you so correctly point out, right? I mean, Colombia actually is is facing now relegation.
Mhm.
They lost their third game today, and if you lose all your games in your pool, you actually then are in relegation, and you have to compete to get into the World Baseball Classic next time.
Which I think
I like that.
I
by the
like
way.
that too, because it gives other nations that are trying to get in a chance to get in. And don't think that these games don't matter, because I know for a fact that this Dominican Republic Venezuela game is really meaningful, because the loser is going to have to play Japan in the quarterfinal. And if you lose that game to Japan, you might not make the Olympics.
Right, and well, I don't.
Yeah, no.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Wow.
So that's how important these games are. These are hugely important because they influence the world ranking for the Olympics. So it's really interesting to see how this is going to have big ramifications, which is why it matters so much to all of these teams and these fans.
And we were watching here on Sunday. We were watching the Dominican Republic, and they went through a few pitches against them for Colombia, and they came out and
No, it was the Netherlands.
Excuse me, you're right. The Netherlands. Didi Gregorius had a home run for the Netherlands, but I think it was the third or the fourth pitcher came in, and everything he threw got hit a million miles.
It was really interesting watching because
bad for the guy.
He comes in, and I forget. I think it was Soto he pitched to first, but I'm not 100%.
Soto got on.
Right, but watching no Soto. We thought Soto hit a home run and he missed it.
Right.
And we were talking about it because it was really interesting because he laid off on the first pitch. He laid off on a slider. That was a good sinker. It was a good-looking sinker. And then the guy throws a slider, and Soto almost tees off on it.
And so he goes back to Doug, and he starts talking.
And he says something. He says something of Vladdy as Vladdy's coming up to bat. Vladdy lays off the sinker. Slider crushes the thing.
I think it's still going.
Caminero comes up a couple batters later because he walks some guys. He throws a slider, crushes a slider. It could clearly tell that, okay, not only we can hit this slider and we can tell it's coming and just lay off the other stuff.
And then the pitcher who gave it the second home run, the inning, went the first one to Guerrero, the second to Caminero, he just hangs his head in the mound going. And then the manager thankfully comes out to take him out of the game. I think it was Andrew Jones.
Yeah.
Andrew Jones manager against Albert Pujols, by the way.
We got to see crazy things like that 17-year-old kid from Brazil getting out Bryce Harper and Aaron Judge.
Right. And we see Manny Ramirez's kid, hit 2 home runs. Lucas Ramirez.
And so that's why a lot of these AA guys are choosing to go and participate in the World Baseball Classic, because if you're a minor leaguer and you have a performance here at the World Baseball Classic and you show something, even if your current team maybe isn't that interested in using you, some other team is going to be watching you. Like let's say you're some guy, and let's say Lindor was there on Team Puerto Rico, and there was some unheralded minor leaguer pitcher on Team Puerto Rico that ended up doing really well, and he's in some other organizations. I am sure
David Stearns.
Right. You don't think Lindor is mentioning him to David Stearns at some point and saying, like, hey, you should take a look at this guy. I think he could be really special. I totally believe stuff like that is happening.
On the other hand, on the pitching side, and watching the U.S. and the Dominican pitch in particular, they're even the pitchers that you don't necessarily think are the most dominating pitchers in Major League Baseball having a pretty easy time of it getting through, unless it's one of the really good
unless
teams.
It's literally the
they
first batter
the
of
Brazil line. I mean, yeah, the
right.
gets
For the same thing happened to Skubal.
Right, 2 days.
Right.
The US was up 1-0 after one, down 1-0 after one.
The first batter, right? So it was interesting to look.
But after that, they just pretty much can dominate.
Right.
The
Logan
hitters.
Webb cruised. Clay Holmes cruised. Tarek
Skubal cruised.
Once, he gave up that.
Struck out 6.
Right. It was like literally the first batter, and it was like I almost wonder if there's a bit of like sometimes if you notice, I've watched baseball games, and the batter, like the first pitch of the game, there's a lot of batters that just kind of like take it in such a manner where they were very clearly always intending on taking that first pitch, and so I wonder if pitchers like Skubal kind of get used to grooving it occasionally because they know there's a subset of guys that are just going to
nerve him to swing at it.
Right. Exactly. You don't do that. It's the first pitch of the game.
And I think we talk about minor league players. The U.S. has 0 minor league players on its roster. I don't know if another team has 0 minor league.
Team that I could think that would qualify potentially for that would be Team Japan. I could
and playing in the
right because they would have a bunch of guys that are coming from their professional league, and like I don't know, Korea could have some minor league guys because could have minor league guys in our systems that they bring.
Korea's
over.
in a lot of trouble, by the way. They're
trying to. Well, they got a huge loss to Taiwan, and that's what we want to see. That's going to be the biggest thing. I really am rooting for Taiwan to come out of that group because that would be really big for the World Baseball Classic to be like, okay, we've broken the mold. The non-favorites can get out of the groups. Are not a foregone
non-favorite
conclusion.
can get out of the group, maybe.
Right. Well, somebody we expect when we look at the groups and we look at the 8 teams that are coming out of them. It's not guaranteed we know which 8 are coming out before we play them.
That would
out.
be pretty awful if it were the case.
And it's been kind of close to that. So having this happen is a great thing, I think.
And pitching wise, you just if you're trying to pitch against these really good teams like Japan,
all-star
US,
lineups,
right? And so you get out your pitcher, and after a while, what I see the pitchers doing when they have less stuff is they start walking people because they're afraid.
Right. They know they cannot leave. They're like, if I throw a strike
in the zone, this guy's going to hit it. So let me try to get him to go out of the zone. They're like, well, I'm not going to swing at that out of the zone.
Right.
And the guys are like, the U.S. is like 17 walks in the
right,
first 2 games.
Because all of these guys have such good eyes, and none of the stuff is so good that's going to trick them into swinging. And they're just going to sit there and go, okay, I'll wait till you throw a pitch in the strike.
It can make the games a little anticlimactic because basically you get a walk, you get a walk, you get a walk, you get a sacrifice fly, you get another walk,
you get a big hit
ball, and it comes in. All of a sudden you've got 3 runs, but you don't have too many of these big plays.
In hit after hit after hit.
You're going to score 9 runs. You get you mentioned Schwarber to it before we on there. Schwarber's 2-run homer. Bryce Terang had a big hit in the first
right, but
game.
there was a lot of boring runs.
Exactly,
there's a run on a wild pitch.
Right, it looks like it's the way it looks to me. So I think in the group stage here, the pool stage here, I don't expect any surprises to come out of there in terms of the teams we think are going to. There hasn't been enough of an upset ahead of time for me to think that the top 2 teams,
really, it's really only the Taiwan-Korea situation that's like that.
Right. If Taiwan were to make it and Korea were to not, I think that would be a huge.
That'd be a huge upset.
Thing. Yes, and it made me think and about the Taiwanese. The Taiwan Little League wise has got a very rich history of being very successful and winning Little League championships. There's not that many people in Taiwan. There's a lot, but I don't think there's like 30 or 40 million people at the most, on the island and all that stuff. For them to be able to be dominant in Little League baseball, and it just can't compete. And they have professional leagues in Taiwan. I think Ching-Ming Wang, of the Yankee pitcher, is the greatest Taiwan player I think ever made it to the major leagues. You can't think of another one that had that kind of an impact. So it's interesting to me that they can't compete. And I think it's just simply a question of population.
Well, I think it's at a 12-year-old level, coaching and drilling and not making mistakes can get you so much farther because the relative level of cap on the skill is so much higher. Like, when you go into the best of the best 12-year-olds playing baseball, it's hard for any one of them to be that much better than the others that it's going to dramatically impact the game. Whereas when you get to the major league level, those differences, because you see it in the major leagues. Like, yeah, there's a lot of Major League Baseball players, but Aaron Judge being on your team is a difference maker.
And that's a really good point because you played on some teams, and when you played youth baseball, and you had a couple of really good coaches, and one in particular that I think we both know, and his attention to detail had you guys play at a level probably better than you might have, simply because you had a reason for doing everything on the field. So you got a lot more out of your abilities.
Right.
And not everybody coached like that.
Right, not right. And there's a big difference because there's a lot of arguments that you can make that coaching like that is not good for development. That you're
kind of coaching to win at a youth level.
To win at a youth level, which is probably coaching to do certain things and take advantage of certain things that are just would not be. You're not going to be able to take advantage of that forever because eventually, when you get to a certain level, either guys are just too good to be caught off guard by that, or it doesn't work because nobody's left that falls for that kind of stuff anymore.
Right. But it was fun to watch because I learned stuff about baseball from somebody exploiting what the other parent coaches might not have known, to do, and was able to, get the most out of his players, even if they weren't the most talented players on the field all the time. So
exactly,
I think that happens in youth baseball. That's a very good point. That's why a place like Taiwan can, thrive there. But when you get to the talent level being that much higher for everybody else going, I'm sorry, man, if Schwarber's going to hit the ball 400 miles, it doesn't matter, how much training you have.
Right. It does. You can't train having guys good enough to get Kyle Schwarber out.
So the innings limit, is going to play a role because I've already noticed the managers trying to sort of, play around with the guys because you can only get a certain amount of pitches and you can only get, pitches over a certain amount of days.
And trying to plan around like where the game is ending because of the run rules and stuff makes it also not easy. Run ruling a team is hugely beneficial just because it saves you so many pitches.
And we haven't seen any injuries to speak of that I can think of in this so
Knock
far.
on wood.
Which is great. I've seen guys get hit, and every time you see a guy get hit, we saw Junior Caminero get hitting the elbow today, and he was
in pain
and all that stuff until he came up 2 innings later and hit a ball to the moon.
Robert Stack came up with a lame arm for Team Israel, like you said, but that was now he's going to have a thoracic.
Right, he had a bigger problem than
than we would have known. So we can't really say, that was a WBC specific injury. That would have come up in spring training just the same.
And speaking of injuries outside the WBC, it was Hunter Green who came up with the hated elbow tightness during the week. And boy, would that be horrible news for the Reds if, in fact, that turns out to be something that you don't want to know.
And he's a guy that already doesn't start a ton of games last year. That was one of the things
he had 19 starts last year.
Held him back from being really in Cy Young contention just because he didn't start enough games. And so
but I would say that any chance that the Reds have to do something in that division is directly related to Hunter Green being Hunter Green.
And I'm just gonna say, you know how it's not good. They already named Andrew Abbott opening day starter,
and I haven't heard about it since. So. Yeah.
That's not a good sign. The fact that they're already 2 weeks out, no, he's not going to be opening day starter. That's got to be scary if you're a Red fan.
And we watched the Netherlands, we mentioned, play today, and we saw Profar out there, but it wasn't Jurgensen Profar, and we won't be seeing Jurgensen Profar for the next 162 Major League games.
As he has been suspended again.
And he basically got pulled out before he was about to go on the field with the Netherlands to play with his brother in the World Baseball Classic, and they went, nope, you're done. And not only you're done for Major League Baseball too. So the Braves, who signed him to a pretty big contract last year.
That's a brutal contract.
That's a brutal contract, and it hurts more now than it even did before. So, I don't know how
on a team that did not have a ton of outfield depth.
No, we're going to do our season preview in a couple of weeks. And
that is something
that plays.
You did not think that would be a thing that you would think would affect your opinion of the Atlanta Braves, but they feel more like a house of cards than they looked at the beginning of this offseason.
I had already begun to have my doubts about the Braves, and I'm no different than that. And I always respect the talent there, and their ability to beat the Mets because that's what they do.
Right, but it feels a lot more like, like instead of looking at a dragon, I'm looking at one of those like Chinese puppet dragons that they all dance around with and wear. Like now I'm seeing that, I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't look like the real dragon I remember it being.
And no more Bobby Cox,
right?
No more Brian Snitker, it's Walt Weiss. Somehow I'm not as shaken to my boots with Walt Weiss.
I think it's because you think that you're not a fan of the name Walt.
Maybe
except on Walt Clyde Frazier.
So we do have a lot of Major League future Hall of Famers that are playing both in the World Baseball Classic, and we believe that will be playing in Major League Baseball this year.
Right. I think you could argue that you have at least one for sure Hall of Famer currently playing on Team USA. Arguably two, just because I think that there's a bunch of guys that are going to be Hall of Famers that actually aren't there for Team USA right now, and that would be that are for sure Hall of Famers. Because I think
injured, right.
If I'm looking at the top, there's like 6 guys in my mind right now in Major League Baseball that are guaranteed Hall of Famers. That if they all died in a plane crash right now, literally not them each, they're all flying a plane, planes just crash into them, they would all be Hall of Famers.
And I wrote an article a few weeks ago where I teared up the players.
And I think we should go through that because I think people don't realize, like, okay, wait a second, you're going to say there's really 6 guys. And I'm like, yeah, there's 6 guys when you think about it.
Well, there's actually 7 because you pointed that out to me before that I left off Mike Trout.
Right, and Trout is his last few years haven't been great, but Mike Trout's a Hall of Famer and we all know it. Freddie Freeman is a Hall of Famer, and we all know.
Playing in the WBC, and he'd be playing for Canada, and they probably could use him.
But yeah, he's a guy that is a guaranteed Hall of Famer.
He's a no doubt.
You look at we talked about it a few weeks ago when we were kind of comparing him with the other first baseman for this era. He stats out better than all of them. He's a really good defender. And most critically, he shows up when it matters most.
Yes, that means a lot, and he is...
As we've always talked about on us, World Series and playoff performances are purely a bonus, and for Freddie Freeman, are they a bonus? Because he was so big in some of these World Series for both the Braves and the Dodgers, and he's had so many big postseason hits for the Dodgers since he's come over there that I don't know how he's just not and when you look at him, you know who his teammate is? His teammate's also a Hall of Famer in Mookie Betts.
I think so too, and I'm actually surprised, and maybe it's a good thing for Mookie, who's played so much baseball the past few years, to not play in the WBC.
I think the Dodgers are thrilled about that.
I think so too. I think he's in his early 30s right now. Like you said, he's a future Hall of Famer. But it's hard to keep going 120 miles miles an hour the whole time. So taking a little, rest after 2 World Series championships, he's entitled to that, as is Freddie Freeman for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Will Smith, however, can play for the U.S. team,
but
he did
there's
the same thing.
there's guys for and the guy on Team USA obviously is Aaron Judge. He's played 10 MLB seasons. His 5 or 6 year peak is Pujols-ian when you look at how insane it is. Because Pujols, when you look at the 7-year peak Pujols puts up, I don't think there's almost anybody that compares to it in terms of just the sheer staggering
ridiculousness of
how good it is. And Judge is maybe the only guy that's going to outdo that ever.
Right. And so you put guys into that category. And Shohei Ohtani, once he plays the 10 years, because he hasn't yet,
right.
He would be a Hall of Famer too.
And that's why Ohtani is not in there, because there's enough that could happen that could stop Ohtani from being in the Hall of Fame purely on just he gets injured and doesn't play enough seasons basis. Likely, but he's just far enough away from that where you can't put him in as a bona fide for sure Hall of Famer yet. But I mean, there's other guys. Manny Machado.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer.
He's a Hall of Famer, everybody.
Yeah.
There's a lot of third basemen right now that are Hall of Famers.
That's a good point. Nolan Arenado, I think, is a Hall of Famer. I have him in Tier 1, and because his recent years have not been so good, there's some people are going, really? He's a Hall of Famer? He's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, right. He's got 353 career home runs, and more importantly, everybody gives Machado so many flowers for being a great defensive third baseman. Nolan Arenado has 10 Gold Gloves. He beats him every year.
Right. So that's why Manny Machado doesn't have more Gold Gloves, because he plays in the same league with Nolan Arenado.
Exactly.
And another guy who doesn't win Gold Gloves, but I think is he's underappreciated by you and me, but I think to a lot of fans, Jose Ramirez.
To non-baseball,
another third baseman,
yeah, not big baseball fans. I think if you're just a fan that you really only follow your own team and when they're good, you probably don't have but if you're a baseball fan, you have an appreciation for how good Jose Ramirez is.
And it's too bad that for the Guardians that they were not able to find a way to keep Francisco Lindor, because what a left side of the infield that would have been.
Hall of Fame left side of the infield. And obviously, we talked about position players here. We don't want to leave out the pitchers, because you do have Scherzer and Verlander out there, and Kershaw, who are
Kershaw retired, so we take him. He's not going to play this year. He's going to play in the WBC. I think at some point they're going to let him go out there and throw a pitch or two.
Right.
They're going to do very much more than that.
But he's retiring. Scherzer and Verlander, and those guys are all obviously slam dunk Hall of Famers.
Agreed.
I don't think individually, the more interesting discussion is not which one of them is Hall of Famers, but which one is the best, because I honestly don't know how you pick which one of them is the best out of that group just off the top of your head.
Yeah, and I think Scherzer, has done some things that Verlander hasn't, and Verlander has done some things that Scherzer hasn't.
And Kershaw's done some things that the others haven't. They've all won World Series. They've all had differing levels of success in the postseason. They've all won Cy Youngs. It's a really interesting group, because you very rarely have 3 guys that are this good all pitching at the same time, all retiring in similar years to one another.
And because he's such an iconoclast, Zach Greinke, who hasn't officially retired yet, although he hasn't pitched in Major League Baseball in 2 years.
Yeah, where does he fall in your tiers here?
He would be a Tier 1 Hall of Famer for me, but I consider him sort of... He's not going to play this season, is why I didn't include him.
Right.
You're not going to get to watch him play Major League Baseball. I don't know what you think. I mean, everything about Zach Greinke screams Hall of Famer to me. And in an era where it's hard to pick starting pitchers, harder and harder to pick starting pitchers who are going to be Hall of Famers.
The only thing I will say is you do have Craig Kimbrell on your list, because he's here in Tier 2, guys that are played the requisite 10 seasons, and they're pretty likely to be included. There's no guarantee Craig Kimbrell's making an MLB roster this year.
Well, he's trying to make the Mets at this point, and I put all of the closers there. Aroldis Chapman and Kenley Jansen, all of them have the 400 career saves or more, and they have been dominant at what they do. And I, for one personally, value closers higher than most, because I think pitching under that pressure is undervalued by fans.
And let's put it this way, Hall of Fame voters, you have actually a really easy thing here, because you could just slow roll putting each of them in one year after another, and that way you can save yourself, and you're like, oh, we don't have anybody great to put in this year. You can just stick in Kenley Jansen. Nobody's really going to argue while you're on.
And because of the way relievers are used, I can't think of another Major League closer who's even on the radar. Edwin Diaz would probably be the closest, and he's a long way away from being a Hall of Famer, if you ask me. I didn't include Salvatore Perez and Tom Stone, who we had on a podcast a few weeks ago, the writer. He says, I'm surprised you didn't put Salvador Perez there, and I thought, Yeah, probably should have put him in tier 2. I think I just neglected to include him at all. It's hard to keep a catcher who's got 300 career home runs and 9 Gold Gloves out of the Hall of Fame because you got to have some criteria.
Right. It's like, okay, well, how many other catchers are better than that? There's not a lot.
And so he's not playing at a Hall of Fame level now, and he hasn't been very good over the past 3 years. So he's going down the same road that Nolan Arenado is that because his recent history isn't so good,
we forget how good he was. Right.
How good the guy is.
But there's still a bunch of guys playing right now. You got Paul Goldschmidt, Bryce Harper, Francisco Lindor, Altuve. All of those guys are pretty much guaranteed to be Hall of Famers at some point.
I have them as probable Hall of Famers.
Right. There's a universe in which, it might take them longer to get in there. It's not like the other guys are all kind of almost guaranteed first ballot names. Each one of these guys, they could take a year or two to get in, or maybe a little longer.
You got to have some. I have a tier 3 here, and I guess the most controversial people person I put in there was Xander Bogaerts. Aside from the, I guess,
this is where
awful salary, I guess you might think, because he got paid so much money, and has he not lived up to it? I think this is kind of interesting because this is where you get into a lot more controversial of picks here, because you're basically saying these are guys that have played the requisite 10 years, because that's a hurdle that a lot of guys ever fail to clear, is just playing 10 major league seasons. So all of these guys clear 10 major league seasons, but like Xander Bogaerts, is Garrett Cole a Hall of Famer yet? Well, he could be, but I don't know if he is yet.
He's somebody that could be in a lot of danger where he loses a season essentially to COVID. He loses another season to arm injury, and now he could lose next season to a lockout. And so he's a guy whose career statistics could be heavily impacted by things that are really outside of his control.
Whereas Chris Sale is further down the road, and Chris Sale has 2,500. I noticed he has 2,500 strikeouts the other day. It's conceivable he could pitch 2 years or more and get that 3,000 strikeout, which would, I think, guarantee it. But
he'd have to pitch 3 to get there.
But he can't have a lockout.
Right.
He can't afford that.
I think Sale is somebody I would feel comfortable moving up into tier 2, just only because we look down on him a little bit because of the other guys of this generation. But once those guys are all in,
Youngs go a long way.
Right.
Exactly. I have Carlos Correa in there, which is another one that makes people wince, going, yeah, but when you look at career numbers for Correa and where he's at and the position he's played, he needs to do more, but it's possible for him to do that.
Right. The same way with Corey Seager and Zach Wheeler. They're young enough, they've played enough, and they've put up good enough numbers.
I agree with you on Seager. I'm not sure I feel the way about Zach Wheeler, though.
I don't know. You look at that resume he's put up now.
Right.
There's not a lot when you get past Sale. He's kind of the best guy of this era in terms of there's not a lot of guys that have been as good for him as many seasons as him now. It's just tough as a Met fan.
If you're not going to put in Zach Wheeler, then what is your criteria at this point? Because
right for a modern pitcher, for a non-Scherzer Verlander type pitcher.
So I've got a tier 4, and I would say would-be Hall of Famers. They've got the 10 years, but they got to do more than the tier 3 guys. They need more than just a little resume padding and all that stuff. And I lead off with Jacob deGrom there.
Right, and I think deGrom is such an interesting case because he doesn't have the arm length of some of these guys in terms of the amount of wear on it, because he came up so late as a pitcher and he's missed so much time due to injury, that even though he's 37 turning 38, he could maybe pitch another 2-3 years at a decently high level,
not getting injured. And he certainly has, I don't know if they learned, but he's adapted to not throwing 101 miles an hour all the time. There's a definite concerted effort to hold back on him, which has helped him get through the 25 season. And if he could pitch if he won another Cy Young, he's in. Right. If he won one Cy Young, and there's no guarantee that's going to happen. But if he had another 2 quasi DeGrom-like seasons, when they talk about the whip and the strikeouts,
right, he gets closer because what
you won't have the wins,
right? But DeGrom has something that's really important. He has a legendary season, even though he didn't pitch all of that season. That run he went on with that Mets that one year,
and he's got 2 Cy Youngs.
Right, but that run, that's like the Bob Gibson '69 season.
Right?
68 season, where it was anybody that was watching baseball at that time remembers what it was like watching DeGrom pitch.
The batters.
And there's a certain level of specialness that when a guy hits that, sometimes that's enough where everybody's like, look, yeah, he might not have had the career stats, But ask anybody that watched baseball in the 2010s and the 2020s, Jacob deGrom is a Hall of Famer.
So
it might be that kind of thing.
I have Giancarlo Stanton in that same category, mainly because he's going to probably have 500 home runs, and I can't not include a guy who have five as like, I don't know, his career ops is
like
really
130s,
good.
but he was a guy that never played the field.
I know.
Like he's an interesting case.
You just can't include him. Alex Bregman needs to do a little bit more. This is
probably the worst thing.
11th season now.
Yeah, probably the worst thing for Stanton is that some of the guys behind him are doing what he does, but they just do it better.
Well, 500 home runs is, there's
right, but as a non-defensive player, the problem is as a DH, his competition.
If Schwarber hits 500 home runs, is he a better contributor than?
I think his career
Stanton?
OPS is better.
It may be, but he doesn't have.
And he's going to
have
played a lot more games.
He's going to have played a lot more games than Stanton did. That's for sure.
Trey Turner, I think, is an interesting name you've got on here.
Yeah. I've always really liked that player. And he also has played 11 seasons. I just think that he's a guy who kind of went down a little bit for a few years, but had a very good season last year. Needs another 2 good seasons, and I think I might be ready to say he's that kind of a guy.
Agreed.
And Bregman too.
Same. Yeah, they're close. They're guys they're starting to trend up. Those are guys that could be in that tier 2 category of guys that are probably going to be Hall of Famers in a year or two.
So guys that I do think that haven't played the 10 years but are going to be a Hall of Famer, that all they got to do is make it, like you say, to the finish line. Besides Shohei Ohtani,
Juan Soto.
Yeah.
He's
both played 8 years, by the way.
Right.
Ohtani and Soto.
The
came in the league at the same time.
And it's just wild to think Soto is turning 28.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to torture people for a long time.
Right.
He's just destroying people.
It's going to be
baseball classic.
Juan Soto's career statistics are going to be insane. Like the number of walks he's going to have in his career when he's done, he's going to break. He might break the all-time walk record for a career.
Yeah, I think that's Babe Ruth's record.
Right,
the career walk record.
I wouldn't just in terms of the number of walks.
That's the only way you're going to keep him from
right
setting some career numbers.
Exactly, and let's be honest, Shohei's going to be a Hall of Famer.
And how about Ronald Acuna Jr.?
I think that's
also got 8 years in the major leagues. Well, he's had some injury problems as well.
And he's the guy I think that you have the most to worry about with injury, because he still has to have. We still have to look at him and go, okay, he's been so good over the seasons. It's hard not to see him, get being that way. But he's missed so much time due to injury that we can't be 100% sure we're gonna see the Ronald Acuna Jr. that we all expect to see all the time.
Well, I think we will. I think he's closer than some of the other guys that haven't played 10 seasons. So I'm gonna name a few of those guys, and that including Fernando Tatis Jr., who's played only 6 seasons, so he's got a long. And then so they got Vlad Jr. He's played 7. He needs to go do more. Yordan Alvarez. I don't know what to make of Yordan Alvarez. He needs to have a season.
He kind of needs
carries the Astros on his back for a whole season, and then I'll go. You know what? He's getting closer, but he hasn't. He's played 7 years, so 3 seasons of prime Yordan. Well, Yordan, he's going to be in the running there. Devers. I don't feel like that guy's a Hall of Fame. When you look at his numbers, though, over 9 years, they're good, but I think he's slipped back from where he was 2 years ago. He had a better chance than he does now, if you ask me. So that didn't help him. And then, the young Bucks, and Bobby Witt Jr., I think he's only played 4 years, but I think I would not be alone saying that, all he's got to do is just keep doing what he's doing for 6 more years. And I think he's going to be on his way to the Hall of Fame because he's that dynamic a player, as is Julio Rodriguez.
Right.
And so he's only played 4 years, which really surprised me, same as Bobby Witt Jr. He's averaged 5.5 WAR over those 4 seasons. Okay, so guys don't average 5 WAR for their careers very much without being a Hall of Famer. That's for sure. And J-Rod's season last year, which started out very poorly, ended up with 35 homers and 95 RBIs, and he plays center field, and oh my goodness.
Yeah, you start looking at that, you're like, wait a second.
So, I think he's a guy, and maybe we forgot a couple of guys here, but you would think about all these guys that we're talking about. It is pretty amazing, that there's that many guys who could be future Hall of Famers that you're watching play right now. So there's a couple of guys that we hope are going to be Hall of Famers, but we're not going to talk about those guys. We'll save them for another day.